then y'all spat. It hits that me, that's facts. I'm still coming for a play. When I hear something, shut up, 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 shut up.
If you stuck around for this last deck, good for you, because this is definitely one of the coolest builds I've ever made. You ever just got really into eating something, but it starts to become boring? Like, you've been really digging peanut butter sandwiches lately, but, you know, today just not feeling it. But then you uncover that little bit of honey you have in the back of the pantry, and you're like, oh, this is a whole different monster, whole different breed of PB. And I'm just telling you, you could have some honey on your hand. Just spice up this whole dish. And the spicy ramen I'm eating represents the thrill of life that you could experience with some of these unique builds. Nailed it. I have 5 unique builds for you guys. Make sure you stick around for all of them, because this video I went all out for. We have entire deck lists for all 5 of these decks. They are pretty in-depth builds, and they are extremely unique compared to a lot of the other common builds you'll see at a lot of commander tables. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment after the video's done. If you want to show some additional support, check out Patreon, and if you're going to order any of the cards I talk about, maybe consider using my TCGPlayer link. And with that, let's get into it. The first commander deck we're going to talk about is a deck based around FARAMIR, Steward of Gondor, who is 1, a blue and a white for a 2/2. Whenever a legendary creature with mana value 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you become Monarch. At the beginning of your end step, if you're the Monarch, create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. This is extremely unique. Not only is it a 4 CMC or higher deck, it's a blink deck that's based around blinking legendary creatures that are 4 CMC or higher, with a built-in payoff of creating 2 1/1 humans, which is a lot of different just powerful effects that we can plug in a ton of powerful cards with, and you've got a really strong deck. So first thing you're going to want to do is find some legendaries that you like that cost 4 or more that you want to start blinking. So some suggestions: I really like Baragond of the Guard, who is 3 and a white for a 3/3. Whenever Baragond of the Guard or another human enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. Now, I understand this one doesn't work with his 1/1 human token effect, because those come in at end step. I mean, it technically works, but it doesn't do anything. But as you'll come to find out, 80% of the legendary creatures we're going to be blinking are humans, so just passively being able to get multiple blinks, which this deck can do very easily, and then buff your board with those said tokens in play, is a really good way to go wide and get some good damage in. I really like Toothy Imaginary Friend a lot in this build, being 3 and a blue for a 1/1 that gets a 1/1 counter whenever you draw a card. That then lets you draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it when it leaves, not when it dies, so you can blink it and keep getting a really good card draw engine. Pair all these ETBs with the FARAMIR trigger of creating 2 1/1s, and then throw something like Moonshaker Cavalry in the build, and you've got a really good way to bring home the game as well. Of course, you're going to need some ways to blink these creatures, so the classics like Cloud Shift or Ephemerate are going to be great in this deck, but there's also some 4-drop legendaries that provide blink, which plays into the synergy really, really well. Abdel Adrian, Brago, Kaikar Zephyr Awakener, Nico Light of Hope, OG the Exquisite Blade, Yorion Sky Nomad, Thassa Deep Dwelling. Tons of legendary creatures that provide blink that cost 4 or more. The deck is extremely unique. It feels like it's kind of cornering you into a build until you realize that once you get your little package of 4 CMC legendary or higher cards that you like, past that point, you just get to have free reign and just synergize with all this powerful passive value that our commander gives, and it's incredibly fun and strong. Here's the removal, the card draw, the mana ramp, and the board wipes, or, you know, board interaction that the deck runs. And with that, we'll move on to the unique build number 2. The second unique commander deck that we've got on today's list is based around 3-dog Galaxy News DJ. Wrong amount of dogs. Who is 1, a red and a white for a 1/5. Whenever you attack, you may pay 2 and sacrifice an aura attached to 3-dog. When you sacrifice an aura this way, for each other attacking creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that aura attached to that creature. So this deck's really interesting. You could build it pretty much any way you want. I think the main way of running it is obviously really powerful auras, make tokens, attach those auras that are really strong to everything on your board, and just go wide. I like that a lot. That's not really what this is. This is a wheel deck. Let me explain. First off, in my version, we do still make tokens. Cards like Frontline Heroism and Ajani's Chosen can turn all of our auras into bodies on the board, which interacts really well with our commander's ability, as well as running just straight up token engines like Assemble the Legion or Elspeth's Son's Champion to just start flooding the board with them. But what I do with them past that is where it gets spicy. We then use auras like Angelic Gift or Chosen by Heliod that draw us a card when they enter, and we use Three Dog's ability to play one of those auras, equip it to Three Dog, draw a card, swing with Three Dog and a bunch of tokens, crack that aura, attach that aura to all of our stuff, draw a ton of cards. We're using all this card draw to dig for Psychosis Crawler so that we can then use following card draw to hopefully wipe out all of our opponents. We also have a combo using Cole the Forge Master along with Impulsive Pilferer, Goblin Bombardment, and Shuko to equip Shuko to Impulsive Pilferer, sack it to Goblin Bombardment, triggering Cole the Forge Master to return the Impulsive Pilferer back to our hand. Impulsive Pilferer makes us a treasure token, which we can then use to play the Impulsive Pilferer, netting us 1 damage with Goblin Bombardment. There you go. And again, if neither of these ways work, a lot of these enter the battlefield, draw a card enchantments provide it with a small buff. So you can just go wide with your tokens and still be a pretty big threat on the board with this build. But you've just got these 2 wheel lines and combo lines in your back pocket, which I think are really cool. Here's a look at the mana ramp, card draw, removal, and board interaction in the deck. If you want to take a full look at any of these deck lists, again, all 5 of them are down in the description and the comments. And with that, we'll move on to the 3rd unique build of the video. I'm going to be real with you. This is a deck I've wanted to build for a really long time, so it's nice to have the Moxfield list for it finally. Our 3rd commander deck is built around Aragorn the Unifier, which I could see you being like, yeah, he's a value commander. Cool. How are you going to make this one fun? It's a mono red deck. It has no other colored spells in it. It's red. We're just gonna burn people with Aragorn. You just kind of get a white out, and you kind of white out all of his other abilities except for the red one, and you've got a 4-drop 5/5 that lightning bolts somebody when you play a red spell. It's a pretty good commander for a mono red deck. So first thing the deck wants to do is play burn spells. So we've got stuff like lightning bolt, shock, grape shot to deliver direct damage to, you know, creatures sometimes, mainly players, and then trigger Aragorn to follow up with 3 more damage. We then pair this up with the classic Spellslinger payoff engines in red, like Gutter Snipe, Fire Spitter Whelp, or Erebor Flamesmith, which deliver more damage on top of that when we play instants and sorceries. But we're still not finished, because we pair that with damage doublers like City on Fire or Dictate of the Twin Gods, and you have an insane amount of damage output in this deck. Here's a look at our mana ramp, our card draw, and our removal for the deck. And with this deck particularly, I do want to show you an image of the land base, because we run a bunch of dual lands, but all of them contain red and then another color. So we're always having the red. We can also just passively get the other colors we need to play Aragorn. Mono red, Aragorn, baby. So our 4th unique build of the video is one that I've had working on Moxfield for a while, and I finally got it finished. The deck is based around AKUL, the Unrepentant, which is 2 black and 2 red for a 5/5 flying trample. Sacrifice 3 other creatures. You may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, activate only as a sorcery, and only once each turn. So if we can sack 3 creatures, we could cheat something from our hand into play, which is incredibly good. What this deck does is run every single card we could get our hands on that's a creature that enters with at least 2 other creatures. So you can just get AKULs activated from playing 1 creature. So stuff like Beetleback Chief, Goblin Gang Leader, and Sengir Autocrat will all just provide the 3 creatures that we need to sack with AKUL right off the bat, which then we can sack to cheat out some insane threats like Elderbrain, Wormcoil Engine. Honestly, just fill in whichever giant scary creatures you like cheating in, and you cheat them in. Not to mention, while all this is happening, there's going to be a lot of creatures ETBing and dying on our side. So cards like Blood Artist or Impact Tremors, especially when used in conjunction with each other, output a ton of damage in the list. On top of all this, we run the Death Defy card like Fake Your Own Death, Kaya's Ghost Form, Necrogen Communion, so that we can sack these creatures that are entering and making more creatures to our AKUL and just have them re-enter and refill our ability to use AKUL again. Here's a look at our mana ramp, our card draw, our removal, and our board interaction. And with that, we'll move on to the 5th and final deck of today's unique builds video. If you stuck around for this last deck, good for you, because this is definitely one of the coolest builds I've ever made. The final unique build is based around SEFRIS of the Hidden Ways, who is a white, a blue, and a black for a 2/3. Whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, venture into the dungeon. This ability only triggers once each turn, and whenever you complete a dungeon, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, SEFRIS is a very strong commander. A lot of people run her. She's a super strong, just passive value from the dungeons, and then you reanimate creatures. and you just run pretty much good stuff, control, SEFRIS, reanimator, bop your face. But not I. What I really like about dungeons is that, for the most part, as you progress through them, their rewards get better until you get to that final sweet succulent reward of the dungeons. So they naturally scale throughout the game. If you can start a dungeon fairly early and consistently go through it, you're going to just get scaling value throughout the game. I really wanted to play into this, so that's exactly what I did. First off, the deck runs level up cards that can be very useful early game and then just scale up into the middle game and late game. There's 3 different cards that fall under this category. Of course, we've got the class cards like Caretaker's Talents, which you can level up the effects of progressively throughout the game, providing you more and more powerful effects the later the game goes. The next kind of level up cards we have are the actual level up cards from Rise of Eldrazi, like Echo Mage for 1 and 2 blue that you can level up to start copying more and more spells. So, again, scales throughout the game. And the third and final type of level up card are cards like Frodo, Sauron's Bane, which is a 1 white 1/2 that you can dump more and more mana into to progressively transform it into stronger and stronger versions of itself. All fitting with Sefris's dungeon mechanic to just feel like you're always progressing and evolving throughout the game and getting effects that are scaling to whichever point in the game you're at. The next way we do this in this deck is with transform cards. Cards that can come out for a relatively low cost and then transform for a more expensive cost into a more late game threat. Cards like Concealing Curtains and Bloodline Keeper are both relatively early to mid game creatures that you can then transform into much larger late game threats. We've also got sagas like the Restoration of Ainjo and Inventive Iteration, which can both go through a cycle of saga triggers, which on their own progressively scale, while also transforming into a creature, which helps us get into the mid and late game easier. The final type of transform card we got is the Planeswalker creatures like Kithias, Hero Vakros, and Liliana Heretical Healer, which are both creatures that, if a trigger is met, can both transform into really powerful Planeswalkers, which again, help us in the mid and late game. But oh no, that's not it. This deck's scaling as hard as you can. We've also got battles. Invasion of Segovia, Invasion of Amonkhet, and Invasion of Dominaria are all 3-drop sagas that provide powerful effects when they ETB, but we can also attack to get them to flip into more powerful mid to late game creatures. And finally, the cherry on top of this scaling cheesecake that we've made with this deck is spells that cost X, as they just inherently are good at scaling throughout the game. Defenders of Humanity lets us dump X into it to make 2/2s, which we can do early because it lets us do that exact same effect again once it's in play by exiling the card, letting us scale tokens whenever we need them. March of the Canonized does a similar thing, except it's an enchantment that has a second effect if your devotion to white or black is big enough that turns the creatures it's creating into 4/3 demons with flying, again, scaling the card itself early game, mid game, late game, with a bonus permanent effect that scales on its own as well. And with all this scaling, it seems like this deck is going to just kind of always have something to do, which I actually really like the idea of. Here's a look at the mana ramp, the card draw, the removal, and the board interaction that the deck runs. Again, if you want to get a full look at any of these deck lists in their entirety, I do have links to the Moxfield list down in the comments and the description. And with that, I really appreciate you guys checking out the video. Make sure to drop a comment if you enjoyed the video. If you want to show some additional support, you can head over to Patreon. It starts as low as $1. And if you want to order any of the cards you saw in this video, please consider using my TCGPlayer link. It helps me out a ton. Big shout out to all the patrons you can see on screen right now. And with that, I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.